Today, we're talking about the guilt factor and how it gets men to stay and how women use it to get them to stay. I'm Dyann Bridges, and this is another segment of the Body House Chronicles. Guilt is a powerful tool, and in my experience, oftentimes women use it with men to keep them in a relationship, and men go along with it. It's a somewhat pathological way of feeling bonded. I think it starts with our parents. Our parents make us feel guilty about all sorts of things. And in return, we as children behave the way they want us to, and we get their approval. And guilt isn't always bad. There is such a thing as healthy guilt, when you know you've done something wrong, and perhaps done something that violated somebody else's boundaries. It's good to have that as a barometer. It helps societies flourish. The trouble is when guilt becomes confused with respect. That's where it all goes wrong. When someone can make you feel guilty for something, oftentimes we interpret it as a respect for that person. But really, it's just a manipulation. Why? Because the person who is making the other one feel guilty has stepped over a boundary. Instead of maturely trying to find a compromise and perhaps drawing a bit of a line in the sand of what's okay with them or not, they've placed blame on the other person and insinuated or blatantly suggested that the other person created some type of injury to them. So they're making themselves into a victim and the other person into some type of abuser. For example, they didn't say, well, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a call when you're going to be late. Instead, they'll say something like, oh, you jerk, you never call. You're late again. You're goofing off. And I've been here waiting for you, or I had dinner ready for you, or whatever. Unfortunately, sometimes people confuse guilt with respect. And I do believe this starts in childhood with parents. Oftentimes when parents make their kids feel guilty to try and keep them in line, kids interpret that as demanding respect or commanding respect. And when they feel obligated to their parents to alter their behavior, they're showing them a sign of respect. So when we become adults and we get involved with romantic partners, that gets transferred. This gets in deep in a subconscious level and can go on for years. And in this particular case that I'm talking about, where women will play on a man's guilt, and he feels guilty and then ends up perhaps reluctantly or sheepishly doing what she's asking him to do without ever stating his side or his needs, or putting down a boundary where he needs it and finding a compromise. He just succumbs to feeling guilty, and life goes on until the next chastising from her, and he caves to the guilt again, until they can both get to a point where they can state their needs clearly from their point of view. It makes a person very vulnerable to do that. When you don't blame the other person, you take responsibility for what you need and don't need in an intimate relationship, you put yourself at risk. That's why it's really important to meet the other person with a level of maturity and calmness, so that they can say, oh, okay, now I understand what you need, but I really want to go and do this, or I really love doing that. Can we compromise? But this is often played out on a subconscious level, which is why it's so important to stay present, sit with your discomfort, keep a part of yourself watching your thoughts without disassociating. This is important. You must be aware of your own thoughts and your own feelings. Allow that to happen and ripple through your body, while at the same time maintaining a measure of control in your behavior and with what you say. It's a lot to ask, but that's adulting. That's what it means to be an adult. And we're not going to do it perfectly, but we've got to give it a shot. So guilt does not mean respect. When two adults are in a romantic relationship, it demands a certain level of intimacy and vulnerability, which means you've got to own and be responsible for your own needs, your own emotions, your own thoughts, and your own behavior. You can't just dump on the other person. You can't just manipulate and push the guilt buttons over and over again to try and get what you want. I mean, I guess you can, but you'll both suffer. You're creating tension. You're creating problems. It can only end in something bad until we can mature and grow up. That's it for this segment of the Body House Chronicles. Have a very sensual day. Thank you. This is your host, Dyann Bridges, and you've been listening to the Body House Chronicles.